All right, that's a good sign. All right, well, thank you everyone for coming tonight. We're really excited to have such a great turnout. We had an incredible turnout last week too for banjos, steamboats, and Mississippi River last week. So thank you for coming, and we're so excited to have local author Tim Schlagenhaft. Before we get started, just a quick shout out regarding some of our other live and Zoom events that we have coming up in the next few weeks. Around the Farm Table is this Saturday. It's a live PBS food demo. There's no registration required. It starts at 10 o'clock. So if you're interested and available, we hope that you can join us. It's hosted by PBS host Inga Witcher. There's also a cooking demo with Margot Yoder via Zoom. We have Minnesota author Alan Eskins coming next month. We also have two informative events, one on Alzheimer's disease and dementia, and that's next Tuesday. That's not a live event, that is via Zoom. And all the information is either in the paper or it's on our website. So we've got that next Tuesday. And then at the end of next month, we have The Art of Dying Well. It's based on a book by Katie Butler, and that's led by two medical professionals. So just some things that you might want to keep in mind. We have all the information out on our website, but we also have some flyers up front if any of you want a flyer with a little bit more information. And then just a quick reminder, our drinking fountain and our restrooms are available through that back door right to your right as you go out the back door. And also for those of you who came in a little bit later, we are having a drawing at the end of the presentation for a free copy of Tim's book. And so there's little pieces of paper in the back you can sign up. Otherwise, at the end too, Tim has some extra books available if people would like to buy them. And they are $10 each. And I think that's it. Yes, thank you. Yep, that's the copy. So with that, then please join me in welcoming Tim Schlagenhaft.
Really appreciate you coming, Stacy, especially the Lake City Public Library for giving me the opportunity to talk about fishing and my book.
And thank you to Patty Speed for sharing it with me so that I knew about it.
Thank you, Patty, very much. And all of you, it's a beautiful night. Thank you for coming and being willing to sit inside and listen to me expound about fishing. I would like to introduce my mom and dad are here, Mary and Bill Schlagenhaft, and my wife, Jenny. You can all feel free to interrupt me with questions and things as we go through. I'm going to be doing quite a bit of reading of passages and then talking about some things related to that. And so I'll get started with the first one. This is out of the first chapter called The Kid. I don't remember the first time I fished. Mom tells me I fished out of a playpen when I was 9 months old, but I don't know if that is fact or fiction. I also don't remember my first fish. Most people seem to remember this, and it's something they're very proud of. Yep, I caught my first fish when I was 3. It was a big catfish. Must have weighed 5 pounds. I don't remember a single thing about being 3. It's possible I caught my first fish at 3, but it's also possible I caught my first fish when I was 9 months old and stuck in that playpen. I believe it was a nice brown trout taken on a size 22 hairnet on a 3-weight sage fly rod. Ever since I can remember, I've been obsessed with fishing. I've loved it my whole life. As a kid, everything I thought about was fishing. I read every fishing sports afield, outdoor life I could get my hands on. When I wasn't fishing, I was digging worms just in case Dad would take me fishing. So that has been with me my whole life. I've always had that as my #1 hobby. If I have time to do something on my own, I want to go fishing, and that carries through to today. I love to fish as much as I've ever fished, and I've had the privilege of fishing then over many years with many people in many amazing places, and I'd like to tell you a little bit about some of those tonight. So this is from the last chapter, Why I Fish, chapter 19. I stood on the ice by myself tonight and watched the wind bring weather from the north. First, faint raindrops that touched my cheek. Then the sun changed to sleet, taking the hood of my rain jacket. Finally, I watched the bluffs disappear in full-blown snow. The fishing was slow, but like so many times lately, it didn't really matter. Standing there, staring down the hole, or gazing at the nearby bluffs, I found myself somewhere in the past and somewhere in the future. So when you're standing on the ice by yourself, and the fish aren't biting, you just think about stuff. And I started thinking about all these experiences I've had. And I thought maybe I should start writing some of these down. That way I might not forget them when I get older, and I could recall them. So I started remembering an event, and I started to write a little story about it. And one story led to another, and I kept working on this over quite a number of years. And I finally accumulated quite a few short stories. And I would sometimes share them with family or friends, and they would remember stories, and they seemed to enjoy them as well. So I decided maybe I should turn these into something more than just stories that I've gotten on a computer somewhere. So I decided to make a book. Started put a book together. I thought mostly for my family and for my friends. And for me, when I'm too old to go fishing, and I can at least read about it. But I thought too about other fishermen that are more serious. They got similar stories. They've had similar things happen to them. They might enjoy reading about some of these stories themselves, and especially they might learn a few tips that they don't know, or they may fish some places that they've never fished before because of the book. And so I thought, maybe I'll try to set several goals for the reader. So what I wanted the reader, I'm going to read these out here, what I wanted the reader to go away with after they read this book was, one, is they remember interesting stories of their own that maybe have triggered some of those stories. That they also cherish their friends and their family that they fish with and spend time with. That they can relate to some of the places that I've fished and gone to. That they learn something that might help them catch more fish. For every fisherman, that's very important. And then they think also maybe about some of the philosophical issues with fishing also. So those were the 5 goals that I set that I wanted the reader to have a relationship with. And after many years, probably 15 years, and I mostly worked on this in the winter, I finally completed this book. So now I'm going to read some excerpts, paragraphs that highlight some of the goals. Okay, this is where I make it a little bit more fun. This is from chapter 1, The Kid. So back to Dad and the Muskie. He's the guy right there in the middle of the road. While Dad is always calm and soft-spoken, this fish brought out his alter ego. He had never caught a legal muskie, which in Wisconsin at the time had to be 30 inches or longer. Within seconds of realizing what he had, the orders started coming fast and furious and at high volume. Get ready, get the net. Don't stab at it, don't get the hooks caught. Whatever you do, don't lose this dang fish. I was probably 10 or 11, maybe. My mom heard him at the campsite a half mile away. So of course it petrified me. Excited about the fish, but what if I mess up? I'll get grounded for life. So I stuck the net in the water and got ready. The fish swam near. I closed my eyes and lifted as hard as I could, and out she came. I flipped her into the boat, and the smile on Dad's face when you're near. Out came the tape measure, 31.5 inches, legal. My first Dad's keeper muskie and everybody on the lake. I just want to thank personally my dad for all the times he's taken me fishing, and my mom for the camping. And I just got to go fishing, and they took care of all the work. So I just want to thank them personally. Well, this next excerpt is from chapter 15, the 30-pound muskie. Let's move, said Steve as he started the motor. Reel in and I'll get us back out to deep water. As soon as he put the motor in gear, the engine died. Must be weeds on the prop, said Steve. As he trimmed the motor to get at the weeds, the boat continued to drift towards the shore, so I made another cast. We were close to shore in very shallow water. We had never seen or caught a muskie that shallow before. The bucktail hit the water, and within 2 cranks of the handle, I felt a strike. Within seconds, the muskie jumped. It was big. Steve yelled, "It's a 40-pounder." When he started knocking. I was all business. Here was my big chance for a big muskie, and I would not blow it. If you have ever caught a trophy fish, the fish of a lifetime, you know the fight seems to take place in slow motion. Overshadowed by the excitement of the battle is the fear that the line will break or the fish will get off the hook. It is intense anxiety. It is especially acute when the fish nears the boat. The angler with the net becomes the most important person in the universe and the most fragile link in the chain. Well, this fight seemed like a lifetime. When the fish finally neared the boat, Dan did what a good net man does. He waited until the fish became tired and was swimming towards us. He slipped the net deep into the water, and when the fish swam over the edge of the net, he lifted. And my quest for a 30-pound muskie was over. So that one didn't get away, but every fisherman has stories about the big one that got away. Everybody does, right, Mike? And I don't have that many of those stories in there, but I do have one story that's not in the book that I'd like to tell you. And maybe I didn't put it in the book because it's better acted out than it actually is when you try to describe it. So every summer we would go with my wife's family to Woods there, which is a 3,000-acre lake on the Michigan-Wisconsin border. Stay in a cabin up there, spend the whole week with the family. And I was obsessed with muskie fishing. There were big muskies in there. I had never caught a muskie really over 32 inches. And I wanted one badly, and I was pretty obsessed by trying to catch one. And we went quite a number of years without doing any good. And one day I'm fishing with my brother-in-law, Tim, who he's casual. He could care less if he catches a muskie. So we're drifting along, and we're kind of bored. It's the middle of the afternoon. It's kind of hot. We've been fishing like 3 hours. We didn't see anything. I just make a typical cast, and we're talking, and we're almost like, hey, strike. So there's a fish on it, and it starts to swim towards the boat. So I reel as fast as I can, and the fish swims right under the boat. My rod slams into the gum. The tip goes down in the water. The drag starts screaming out, and I hear a commotion on the other side of the boat. I look on the other side of the boat, and this huge muskie comes flying out of the water. On the other side of the boat, flips its head and throws my hook to it. The rod snaps back off, and I was just devastated. Still about it. So anyway, that was one that got away. Now I'm going to read excerpts from 4 different chapters, and then I'm going to explain why I'm reading those. Bear with me. Also bear with me. I tend to lose my voice when I talk about it. I get allergies in the fall. Okay, this is from chapter 2, college. Often my high school buddy Frank and his friend Daryl would visit and fish with us. One year it got cold early, and we had about 4 inches of solid, clear ice by mid-November. Frank was coming to visit on the weekend. We fished Monday and Tuesday before Frank's visit and did pretty well. About Thursday, it got quite warm and the ice deteriorated. When Frank arrived on Saturday, we were a little nervous about ice conditions, but able to fish just fine. We caught quite a few pike. That night it stayed well above freezing, and when we made our way out to the spot in the morning, the ice looked bad. I was leading the way, going slow and avoiding the black and the soft ice. Frank made a beeline for the spot. He wanted to be the first one there so we could get the best holes from the day before. He made some snickering comments about the rest of us being chicken and ice fishing wasn't persistent. His remarks were really getting aggravating when he put on the brakes and said, hey, the ice is sagging all around. His eyes got big, and the next thing you know, he was down to his chest. He tried to crawl back up on the ice, but every time he tried, the ice would break. We weren't very sympathetic. Boy, can he swim. Hey, Frank, can you work your way back to the shore so we can let you go and troll later this afternoon? After about 5 minutes, he stepped in a hole and the water was up to his chin. We finally felt sorry for him and pulled him out, but only after he apologized for the sissy comments. Keep in mind, we knew that the water was not over his head. He was not in danger of his life. He was getting pretty aggravated. Over the years of the spring trip, this is from chapter 5, the spring trip, we have seen a lot of changes, most notably our boats. The first few years I fished with Wilt in a 12-foot V-bottom with a 3-horse Mercury. Now this rig will get you places, but you have to be very patient and add lots of beer for the ride. Traveling across the Willow would take 45 minutes, and if the breeze came up, the Whitecaps could make it an hour and a half to 2. Tommy was the only one in the boat that was over 5 horsepower. And he would throw a wake at you when you were going past in his 35 horse. This next one is from chapter 11, Fishing Buddies. One time when we arrived at the access, 2 guys had the entire contents of their boat spread out on the boat ramp. They were feverishly digging under the floor, very animated, and poking away with sticks. We thought that was odd. After about 5 minutes, out pops a 3.5-foot cottonmouth snake, thick around as the meat of a baseball bat. When they told us the snake had fallen out of a tree and into the boat, the color went out of Bill's face. I knew from previous conversations Bill was definitely afraid of snakes. Combined with hair and a beard that was shaggy white, he looked exactly like a ghost. I know it would take some coaxing to get him back out on cat. I must admit, between getting lost in the maze of cypress trees and having killer snakes fall in the bowl, gave me the creeps too. The cabin was full of largemouth and spotted bass, chain pickerel, black and white crappie, red ear sunfish, and white bass. So we just had to risk it. We promised that if one of us was bit by a snake, the other would suck the venom out. Now that is something only the best of friends would agree to. And this fourth one is from chapter 8, or chapter 12, the cottage. Sadly, our vacations to the cottage ended when we lost Mom. And I'll clarify that my mother-in-law I also call Mom. Fishing does not cure cancer. I wish it did. Many of us would live forever and Mom would still be here. The last time we fished together, Mom and Dad came to our place in Minnesota for a long weekend. It was mid-October and beautiful. We were all supposed to go golfing, but Mom mentioned that maybe we should go fishing instead. Jenny and Dad stayed home, so it was just Mom and me. I had the boat ready in 5 minutes. I could do that usually when we go fishing. I can get We headed to Robinson Lake, a backwater on the Mississippi. I knew a spot along the weed bed where I had caught panfish in the past, but hadn't fished it in a long time. So we found the weed bed and tossed out anchors in about 4 feet of water. I was expecting to move around to find the fish, mostly bluegill. We pulled out the cane poles, just like at the cottage, and started fishing. It wasn't 30 seconds before her bobber went under and out popped a big perch, her favorite fish by far. Mom was brilliant with the cane pole, preferring them over rods and reels. She could lift a fish out of the water and into the boat with the grace of a ballerina. The next fish was a perch too. And from that point on, it was perch hell. When we finally quit, we had each caught the biggest perch of our lives, up to 14 inches in the live wells. When we got home, we spread the perch out on the lawn and admired it and took a picture I now cherish, because little did I know that would be the last picture of Mom and me. It was the last time we fished together. God blessed us both that day, especially me. So, and I do have a picture of that picture. It's a lousy print out on the computer. I'll just pass that around. That was from that day. All of those 4 individuals in those chapters are no longer with us. We've lost them. And I know many of you have lost friends and family and people that you do things with, and it's tough. It's really tough. But, you know, it's also great to have the memories of them and to read about that and the stories. And that also helps me be appreciative of the friends and family that I have now. It's just a lifetime of fishing, or whatever your hobby is, and the things that you do brings those people into your life. So, all right, I'll move on. This is from chapter 5, the spring trip. Then one year, one of the guys on the trip, Scotty, started coming in with nice streamers of walleye. After some jealous prodding, he admitted he'd been reading a book by a local guy who used timber jigs, a weedless jig he had invented. The jig, 1/16 ounce, had wire guards that allowed him to fish through heavy timber. He called it fishing the wood. We learned to work the jig very, very slowly, and we had to have a sensitive rod tip. Barely lift and pull, cast out, barely lift and pull. Feel the timber, and almost close your eyes and visualize it. Feel the jig catch on a branch, visualize it, and gently snap the tip of the rod, and feel the jig pop free. At first we snagged often, but once we got better at the feel and became more patient, it paid off big time. We all started catching walleyes, even in giant hog jams, where no angler in their right mind would go. The thunk of a bite after a snag jig pops off a branch is a satisfying thing. To me, it's like, oh, fish makes it feed. Now the subject of wood is a big part of our daily conversation on the spring trip. Deep wood, shallow wood, new wood, scattered wood. Out on the boat, you might even hear someone mumbling, "I can't feel my wood," which if you work from our camp, you might find quite odd. Wasn't sure, but that should be it. So this is, those are, in the book, there are a number of things I talked about, the various lures, times to use them. These are my version of a timber jig. I decided to make them myself, and so I make them. It's a wire guarded jig, and I'd like to just pass them around. Be careful of the hooks and see what they are. But I'd also like to know, is anybody's birthday today? Anybody's birthday in September?
Yeah.
Patty, you are the winner of these 3 jigs. Let's see how you get those 2 of them.
I'm gonna make earrings.
So if you don't learn a single other tip from this book, learn that one, because that is really effective. We caught lots of fish with that technique. Okay, so I've had the good fortune to fish with many anglers of all skill levels. And I've learned a lot. The best way to learn is to go fishing with someone new. And they will do a technique that's probably new to you that maybe you haven't done, do modification to it. And I've learned an awful lot from other people. And I've also helped people get started with fishing, more beginners. And I'd like to read a passage about one beginner that kind of tops my list. Let's see what number here. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, take me a little bit. All right, this is from chapter 12 of Cottage. My brother-in-law is a cardiologist, and one year took some time out of his busy schedule to join us at the cottage. He had fished a little, but wanted to learn, and I figured anybody smart enough to be a cardiologist ought to be fast. First, we needed to get bait. When we got to the bait shop, he looked puzzled. He pointed to a sign that said crappie minnows, $1 a scoop. Whispering quietly, he asked, "Why would anybody want to buy crappy minnows?" I knew right then I would rather have him give me a triple bypass than handle the net when I had much less. After I explained the minnow situation, we had it out. He had just purchased a new rod, some tackle, even a really nice fish basket. It was our first trip, and knowing he had fished very little, I asked if there was anything I could help with. He picked out a hook and got ready to tie it on. I asked if he knew any fishing knots, and he quickly replied it didn't matter, as he would rather tie a surgeon's knot. Wow, I thought, I wish I knew how to do that. His very first cast, it wasn't a minute before his father went down. He set the hook and for a second had on a nice fish, then got off. When he reeled in, there was a curly little end on the line where the hook had been. He tied on another hook, another bite, and another curly end. I decided to not waste any time learning the surgeon's knot. In fact, next time I go to the doctor for stitches, I'm going to take along my little book on tying the clinch knot. So after we straightened out the knot business, we kept fishing, and before long he landed a nice perch. He tried not to show it, as I'm sure losing your composure as a cardiologist is not a good thing. But it was obvious he was very excited and quite proud. He carefully removed the hook, slid the fish into his branded fish basket, and tossed the entire works over the side of the boat. When I asked him what he had tied the basket to, his face lost so much color I thought I was going to have to put in a sting. Okay. Yeah, that was the only year that he came up there fishing with us that year. This is from chapter 14, Cleaning Fish. I sometimes struggle with keeping fish. When a 9-inch bluegill slides out of my ice fishing hole, it immediately creates a conflict. Should I keep it or should I let it go? It is a male with a bright orange breast, a long blue auricular flap that's off the gill, and faded stripes on an opaque green body. Its short, stubby forehead, thick back, and scarred fins tells me it's an old fish, one that has survived many previous fishing seasons. It is beautiful, and I admire it. Or it might be a 12-inch yellow perch with blaze orange pectoral and pelvic fins, and a golden yellow body, sharply contrasted by distinct black stripes. Or maybe a 20-inch walleye, with dorsal spines like sewing needles, golden flanks, and a distinct white spot at the very tip of the tail. And I have to decide. Sometimes the fish goes easily in my bucket, plop, along with all the other fish whose fate we have already determined. Just another fish lost amongst a pile of brotherly fish. Not a second thought. But other times, I gently place the fish back in the water to glide slowly down the ice tunnel to home. I often can't predict what I will do until the fish is in my hand. Sometimes it is too beautiful to keep, and sometimes it is too beautiful to let go. The older I get, the more I release these fish. Do I really need to keep it to prove my fishing prowess, to have more fish in the freezer? And I learned something important. Those big, beautiful fish, vivid when fresh from the hole and in my hand, become smaller and duller in the bucket, and smaller yet on the fish cleaning board. When mixed with the other fillets, they disappear entirely. So nowadays, you get into fishing, catching leaks and eating fish. It's a conflict for some people. There are some that don't keep any fish. Others keep every fish. And I like a balance. I love to eat fish. We eat fish maybe once a week, certainly twice a month. And I try to balance my take with release when I can. And it's one of the philosophical issues that fishermen will face. I think a muskellunge is a good example of a fish now that almost everybody releases them, to the point that you probably would get criticized if you did keep a legal muskie now. And I'm not sure that's good. When you're younger, when I was a kid, I wanted to keep everything. And when I take kids fishing, I remember that. As I've gotten older, it's more of a balance. So I just wanted to point out those philosophical things that you deal with when you're fishing. Okay, let's see here. This is from Chapter 6, Sibling Rivalry. These last few years, I have done a lot of self-evaluation as a parent. To be honest, I don't think I did a very good job building a lifelong passion for fishing in the kids when they were little, especially Nick. Forcing a 10-year-old to stare down an ice hole for 3 hours wasn't all that wise. I admit to taking the kids fishing as an excuse to fish myself. I'm honest about it, and wish I had focused more on making sure they enjoyed their experience. Even if it meant leaving 10 minutes after we arrived, which is when they could usually start asking, can we go home now? Then again, I can't expect them to want to fish as much as few people do. So I doubt they even think about this. They probably remember, yeah, Dad used to take us fishing a lot, and that's about it. Natalie has remained interested in fishing to this day. While not a diehard, she still goes with me when we get a chance, and she still catches a lot of fish. There's some stories in here about her catching fish. Her goal is to catch a legal muskie, which we really want these days. Nick, while taking a few years off, has gotten back into fishing. He's caught his first salmon on the West Coast this last week. He joins us when he can on the spring fishing trip, enjoying the setting and the time spent with his dad and his grandpa, and maybe catching a fish or two. Fishing isn't a competition for him anymore, and he appreciates each fish he catches. We all enjoy being together, which is what matters. So maybe I didn't do such a poor job after all. You know, having the kids and having with the family is this awesome, giving those experience of camping. Nick, he would always want to chase turtles. So the fish are biting, and we spent at least half of the afternoon driving around the boat with him in front of the net until we got the live well full of turtles. And he just loved turtles. Salamanders were the same thing. But it kept him interested on the water. And now he's coming around fishing again, which I'm really happy, pleased with that. Yeah, I'm getting near the end now. So. Okay. This is from chapter 16, Bass Weekend. So as we move around the lake, the bright August sky slowly dims. The trees are no longer individuals, but one by one become inseparable from the forest. Casts become more difficult, and depth perception forces you to work by feel and sound rather than by sight. The splash of the bait and the splash of the fish take on more significance. I remember one splash that was especially significant. For 10 years, Jerry had been balancing himself on a boat cushion at the tip of the point of the beat. There was never a hint of unbalance. One day, when we were nearly back to shore, there came an obnoxious splash from the front of the boat. I looked over and there was Jerry, completely submerged. I could still see him clearly, 3 feet underwater, in his gray sweatshirt and blue jeans, with white tennis shoes and white socks, his body facing up, arms and legs spread wide apart, palms out, and a look of pure horror on his face. There were no waves, no sound, just Jerry and what seemed like perpetual suspended animation. And then he disappeared completely. But that quickly changed. He came back into sight, popped out of the water with the cork of a champagne bottle being panned. Grabbing the side of the boat, he tried to climb back in. The boat was about to capsize when Will grabbed an orange, screamed at Jerry at the top of his lungs to stop, or he would whack him with the oar. Jerry heard that and settled down, seeing Will poised to strike. I'm pretty sure he would have whacked him with that. Hang on to the stern, Will said, and we'll roll you back in. But don't make any extra moves. So Jerry complied, and we took him to shore, soaking wet but alive and kicking. The next year, Will had an extra seat with a back and cushions firmly mounted on the bottom. He even talked about installing the seat belt. So if you read the book, that's the boat that Jerry fell out, and that's the seat that was put on. But if you read the book, there's a lot of friends that, close friends that I have fished with, and just those kind of experiences, you tell those stories and you keep telling those stories. You guys have probably done the same thing with whatever you do. You just keep telling stories and reliving them, and it's just a wonderful, wonderful thing. So now let's see, chapter. Okay. This is from chapter 3, Jenny. She has a little chapter. This isn't really about that. The Mississippi River is an incredible place. It's like having the best of all fishing worlds tied up into one. Several hundred miles long, 2 miles wide, and includes lakes, small streams, deep rivers, backwaters, locks and dams, sloughs, log jams, wheat beds, rock piles, and wind dams. It has muddy water where you can't see down 6 inches, and it has crystal clear backwaters where you can see the bottom of 10 feet. You can find solitude, you can find crowds. I could go on and on. It has everything, and is one of my favorite places in the world to fish, and one of my favorite places in the world to be. There are over 150 species of fish in Mississippi, and on any day you can catch a bunch of them. While I mostly fish for walleye, perch, bluegill, bass, or sturgeon, if you wanted to do the species thing, here's how I would go about it on a typical summer day. I would start by anchoring above a wing dam and tossing out a night crawler on a size 6 foot, attached to a 3-way swivel and a 3/4 ounce sinker. In a couple of hours, you could land shorthead redhorse, channel catfish, mooneye, sauger, freshwater drum, maybe golden redhorse or common carp. Next, I would head into a nearby backwater, and with an ultralight rod, tiny bobber, and a small piece of night crawler, I would fish wheat pockets, and add to my tally yellow perch, bluegill, and maybe a pumpkin seed or green sunfish. Before leaving the backwater, I toss a buzzbait across the wheat beds and pick up a largemouth bass, northern pike, and a bowfin. I stop by a log jam and a side channel on my way out of the backwater, and with a keen pole and a small fatted minnow, add black and white crappie rock bass with a warmouth to this. I finish up the day on rock shorelines along the main channel with a jig and minnow picking up walleye and smallmouth bass. I cast along the wing dam with a thin reel and add white bass. And if I wanted to stay late, I'd anchor over a deep hole at dusk and soak a big sucker for a giant flathead catfish and a big gobble once for lake and shelvable sturgeon. That would be a 24 species day. Where else can you do that?
Wow.
We live in an incredible place. If you like to fish, our backyard on the Mississippi River is amazing. it's, if that wasn't here, I don't know that, we probably moved somewhere where there was some more fishing. I don't know of any place in North America you could go and catch as many different kind of fish in a day. You won't necessarily be able to do all of that, but you could get pretty close if that's what you did. And it's just an incredible resource. And if you do read the book, there's a number of places I go to. Some stories from Texas, because Jen and I were down there for 6 years. Some lakes in Wisconsin, lakes in Minnesota. But the Mississippi is dear to my heart. And if you know people that want to get into fishing, it's a resource that's right there. And take advantage of it. So I'm now going to conclude. I'm just going to read the last little thing here. This is from chapter 19 again, why I fish. Remembering my fishing experiences while writing this book has been one of the most rewarding things I've ever done. It has helped me realize how important fishing has been to my life. And now I know why I fish. I know that God blessed my life with fishing. I know that fishing has blessed my life with friends. And I know that family and friends have blessed my life with memories. As I stood on the cold January ice, all these memories melded together to form one epic picture of my fishing life. I saw it clearly spread along the boundary between sky and snowy water. So that's pretty much my story of the book. So I hope somebody's got some questions.
What's your favorite recipe for making panfish, like sunfish, crappies?
Sunfish and crappies.
Share with us?
I have a couple recipes. One that I'll do with a lot of different fishes. I'll take tempura flour, which is a really fine flour, and I'll mix it real thin with ice water. I'll actually take ice, put it in a little bowl, and then get it as cold as possible. And then I'll dip the fish fillet in that, and then I'll coat it with panko breadcrumbs. Panko breadcrumbs make the fish real crispy. Secret, really the most important thing is to have your deep fryer at 375. You should never have it less than that. Don't put the fish in until, don't fry them very long. 2 to 3 minutes. Panfish 2 minutes. Walleyes maybe 3. Another way, and there's a chapter in here called Big Pete's Cabin. He's a little story about Big Pete. I won't give it all away, but he's quite a character. Cut out of the Northwoods, and the best bluegill fisherman I know of. This simple recipe is 1 cup of flour, 1 tablespoon of buttermilk ranch dry powder mix. You mix them together, and you fry it. And coat the bluegills. It becomes a very light batter, and you fry it in hot cold oil. And don't fry it very long. Just kind of get it crisp on one side, flip it over, and take it out. So those are ways that we enjoy it.
How much of that ranch?
A tablespoon per, if you like the ranch, you can go a little heavy. Yeah. Yes.
What's a mud puppy?
A mud puppy.
A mud puppy.
You must have read the book there. A mud puppy, that was the college chapter. It is a fish, but it's got little arms and little legs. And you can kind of call it a salamander, but it's a fish with gills, and it's got like the skin of a catfish, so it's got a real smooth, slimier type of skin. And they twist and turn when you grab them. But they're a native fish. They're a neat fish. They're really cool. They're not that common, and I don't think they bite a lot on baits that people use. Has anybody in here ever caught one? Yeah. So
amphibian, that's technical.
what's that?
Amphibian.
The mud puppy's an amphibian? Well, I'm wrong on that. Amphibian. Yeah.
Have you ever gone down or something? I mean, I've seen.
I've never caught.
The other day I saw one jump, but I've never caught.
I've never caught a paddlefish. A paddlefish is a plankton feeder. So plankton are the small microscopic plants and animals. There's phytoplankton and zooplankton.
They used to snag them, right? With
They
the
snag them
triple
in some
hooks or
places,
whatever.
yeah, and people do catch them by accident, mostly snagging them. But they get really large. They got the big like a bill almost in front of them, big paddle. More get hit by bullets. They like to be near the surface, so we'd always, when I worked for the state, the DNR, we'd see them every year. We get reports.
Yeah, I
And
saw one this summer, somebody chopped it with a boat, it was
Yeah.
cutting like a couple pieces floating on the water.
Yeah,
I
they
went over
get,
to see what it was, I thought it was a big catfish, but it was a paddle.
the paddlefish, they get hit by the props. They're really cool. They're kind of like a sturgeon. They're
Yeah.
kind of a prehistoric type of fish. Patty, you got a question?
I just want to make a comment that I didn't know much about fishing when I read the book. I used to think guys fish so they could get out of the house, away from their wives, and drink beer.
That's just a benefit.
And your book really educated me on the art of fishing and the technicality of fishing.
Okay.
And so the philosophical stuff I got, but I like the technical part, and that's why I wanted you to share it all.
Yeah.
And I thank you for doing this, and if you want to go on a book tour, I'll be your agent.
I'm really not. I mean, there are thousands of fishermen that are way better at it. Technically, I touch the surface of what's out there. The YouTube videos, the magazines, the how-to books. There's just a wealth of information out there now. And YouTube is really, all those videos are really changing the nature. And then the electronics. There's a chapter in here where I discuss. It's called Musings and Useless Facts. I talk a little bit about technology. That's another philosophical dilemma. Some people get upset. They got depth finders now that will project 360 degrees around the boat and show you where the fish are, so you can cast here, there's one there, you cast here, there's one there. They got equipment where you, under the ice, you can see where the fish are, you go over there, it tells you how many feet away to go. Where does it end? And where does fair chase end? And that's a dilemma amongst a lot of people. And I think fisheries are fairly healthy right now. People, clouds catching geese is helping, and our water quality has actually gotten a little bit better in some places because of the Clean Water Act. So that's kind of helping sustain it. And at some point, will we reach it? We got to limit some of this technology. I don't know. I've got some of that stuff myself. It makes fishing easier, makes it better, makes it more successful. So I would go to somebody else if you really want to be a diverse fisher. I'd like to do a little bit of everything. Yeah, when Darren come back and say, yeah, Peter.
Tim, I read your book and I sort of laughed at the chapter where you were talking about one of the first dates with your wife.
Oh, yeah.
And I wondered how you could talk her into this all.
Well, the best way to never have your wife owning a ice fishing again is to take her for the first time when it's 30 below zero, like 30-mile-an-hour winds. Yeah, that'll do it. That did it. That did it. No, that was probably, like I said in the book, that was infatuation. That was nothing to do with anything else. Well, thanks, everybody. I really appreciate you spending your time here. The books, I never thought I'd sell any books. I just thought they'd be for friends and family. I do have some. I have some for $10, and if you like one, I'd be happy to sign it. And also, you can buy them on Amazon. They're $12.99 on Amazon. You have to just type the name of the title, and you can buy it through Amazon too. So.
Didn't this lady have another question?
Oh, I'm sorry, Sylvia, you did.
Oh, yeah, I used to fish, my dad fished a lot, he took us a lot, they owned the resort for a while.
Oh, where?
So, Farm Island Lake,
Oh, yeah.
you know what that is?
I've never fished it, but I know it is.
It's panfish,
Yeah.
lots of sunnies and crappies.
What I've enjoyed about the book and talking to people is a lot of them have something to relate to. I mean, there's a story in there about riding my bike out getting bit by a dog going trout fishing. Somebody told me they had a similar experience. You know, and just little things that I never thought would kind of have any kind of effect. Somebody experienced something like that and they remembered that, and that was kind of cool.
I did have a question.
Yeah,
A tip up,
yeah, tip up.
what is it?
The tip up is it's a device that you set on top of the ice, you drill a hole, and then you usually put a shaft with a spool that holds a line in the water. So the tip up sits on, let's say this is the surface of the ice, this is your hole. Tip up would sit on top of the ice and the shaft would go down, holding the line, and then the line would go down as far as you want to set it to a bait. Usually they fish for pike, sometimes walleye, bass with tip ups. And so there's a flag that has got a spring and you turn it over and there's a little post on top of the tip up that you put the flag on. And that when the shaft, when the spool spins, that shaft's T spins and the flag pops up. So when the flag's down, nothing's happening. When the flag goes up, then there's a fish or the wind blew it up, but most time there's a fish there.
So it's for ice fishing.
Ice fishing.
I never did that.
You never did?
Well, I take that back, because I went up to my dad's place for Christmas time once. So
And you took you out when it was 30 below and you never had that. Mark?
Yeah, Mary and I recently watched a video on Netflix called Seaspiracy. It's fantastic. I'd like to recommend it.
Sea spirits?
Seaspiracy. It's about
Oh, Seaspiracy.
yeah, about
About-
the trade of fishing,
Ocean fishing.
What our message is and how it affects the climate.
Yeah.
And then indigenous people's ability to eat.
Yeah.
That's really a mess.
There's a lot of pressure on our commercial fisheries in the ocean.
Do you ever go spearing?
Pardon?
Have you ever gone spearing?
I've never gone spearing. Has anyone here been spearing?
Yeah.
I'd love to look down the hole. I would always, whenever we'd gone on any kind of vacation or anything, I was more interested in staring into the water and see if I could see stuff. And people talk about it. It's like being watching TV, just looking down the spear hole. So that would be pretty cool. Yeah.
I'll do it even for ice fishing when in the fall,
Yeah.
when it's only 4 or 6 inches deep ice.
Oh,
I'll cut a 2x3 hole and just jig in it, but it's like looking down a picture window watching the
yeah.
different fish swim by and stuff.
That's pretty cool.
Uh,
Yeah, Michael.
Do you have any fishing experiences in Wyoming, fly fishing? Or,
No, I do a little fly fishing for trout and for bass, but I don't have any experience fishing in the western streams. Those are some of the best in the world, some of those streams out there, multiple streams.
So,
We have really good trout fishing here in southeast Minnesota.
Right.
Don't get that a lot, there's some really good fishing.
like other states like in Maine or Oregon, popular in fly fishing?
Yeah, I think fly fishing is real popular, anywhere there's rivers, salmon or trout. Yeah, fly fishing is what most people do for that, because they eat small tiny insects, and you can't really cast that on like a typical spinning rod. But fly rod, you're casting a line, the bait just has to be on the end of it. But you're really, the weight is in the line, and that's what you're casting. But there's a lot of interest in fly fishing. A lot of young women are getting into fly fishing. Absolutely. But thank you for pointing out that the mud puppy is an amphibian. Thank you, everyone. I'll just come back there. Or I got some up here too. So, and thank you so much for coming out. Yeah. Oh, Stacy was gonna do that, yeah. Before you leave.
So if there's anybody else, I'll give you your last chance to come forward or form. Anybody wants to?
I didn't do it.
sorry.
Oh, okay. How would you like me to sign?
To the end.
The Ben,
The end.
okay, the beneficiaries,